In this video, I talk about how to alleviate suffering from the Tibetan Buddhist perspective. My name is David Piccarello, and I make videos on how to practice Buddhism using clear, non-technical language. These videos are for anyone who wants to explore a 2,500-year-old wisdom tradition with somebody with 25 years of practice. So the basis of this video is going to be the prayer, "May all beings be free from suffering and the root of suffering." We explored what all beings means in my first video, and we explored in detail various kinds of suffering and the causes of the suffering in my last video, in my second video. So here in my third video, we're going to talk about the root of suffering and how understanding your own experience of suffering, how you understand other people's suffering, can in fact help alleviate your own suffering. And so the root of suffering is, you could say, very generally negative actions. And so that is almost by definition in Buddhism, the things that are negative will cause suffering, and the things that cause suffering are negative actions. So in my previous video, I walked through how various types of psychological states are caused by certain types of negative actions. And so in this prayer, "May all beings be free from suffering and the root of suffering," it's really important to understand, as a prerequisite, what is the cause and effect. How you go from a negative experience like anger, a negative action like anger, to the experience of burning, the burning of sort of being done wrong or pushing people away and not understanding why the universe is treating you this way. And so as you read the news, as you go through your life, have relationships with people, hear stories, read fiction, read nonfiction, think about history, thinking about the future, do all of that with the idea, the understanding of how different negative mental states cause suffering. And if you go through your life with that sort of understanding, then it actually changes the way that you understand the cause and effect. When you say, "May all beings be free from suffering and the root of suffering," you're really saying, not only in the short term, may all beings be free from the suffering that they feel right now, but may they abstain from generating negative activity. So as you go through life, it's important to look at the world through this lens, that people are suffering, and you want to alleviate their suffering in the short term, for sure. In addition to that, you want people to give up their negative actions so that they don't experience that suffering even farther into the future. So that we don't create these cycles of suffering where you have anger today and that pushes people away tomorrow, and then tomorrow you get angry because people have been pushed away, and that causes further alienation. And the more alienated you are, the more angry you get. So there's another topic that I think is definitely worth mentioning, although it may be kind of obvious, but that is that it's very important to believe in cause and effect. And so cause and effect here, what I'm talking about is, if you don't believe that you can have a negative mental state, very strong desire, addiction, anger, jealousy, if you believe that you can have those mental states and that they're not going to cause suffering in the future, even though they do, then it's going to be very difficult to break yourself out of this cycle of suffering. And the key to alleviating suffering isn't necessarily doing some trick in the moment, but it's breaking the cycle that feeds itself. And so believing in cause and effect, kind of explicitly, and really kind of reflecting on how when you do something negative, when you have a negative mental state, when you are, when you're a jerk to somebody, when whatever many negative things there are to do out there, right? When you do something negative, by definition, it's going to cause suffering in the future, and it's very important to understand that consider it infallible. If it is really true that negative actions and negative mental states inevitably manifest as suffering, I think it's really important to take a moment and look out into the world and think about how people are suffering in all the various ways. This can be something that you can do: go to a street corner, get a sandwich, and watch people and see what people are experiencing. And some people are going to be happy, and some people are going to be sad, and some people are going to be neutral. But everybody has a story, and a lot of people out there are suffering, and they feel like they don't have control over their life. They don't have control over their experience. And it's important, and having this understanding of cause and effect, having this understanding of suffering, and then having a little bit of empathy for that situation is compassion. And so it's very important to generate compassion in order to alleviate your own suffering. So here I'm talking about generating compassion as the entire process of intellectually understanding what suffering is, the various kinds of negative mental states and actions, and how they manifest as suffering, how it's inevitable, and then turning out and looking at other people, turning in and looking at yourself, whether you want to or not, and understanding how we cause ourselves suffering sometimes. Not all suffering. I don't want to put, I don't want to blame the victim here. But in terms of this process of our own negative states manifesting as our own suffering, if you want to alleviate suffering, then generating compassion for yourself, generating compassion for others is really important. And this actually starts this process of understanding how the mind works. Because if you take the time in meditation, in post-meditation, and you look out into the world, you'll see how people project their own thoughts and feelings, their own desires, their own hatred onto other things, their own fear, as if their own feelings were manifested outside them. And this is not at all abnormal. Everybody does this every day, maybe even every minute of every day. So as you start to notice how others and yourself project our own thoughts and feelings onto the world and then interact with those instead of interacting with the world, if you can see that and observe that, then it starts a positive cycle where instead of interacting with your own thoughts and feelings as if they're outside you, with the names and faces of other people, you start to work with them as they are. What it's important to understand is that there's a lot of space and a lot of unknown in the world. And some of the reason why we project, the reason why we get into these cycles, is because we're not okay with basic space, with basic potentiality, with unknown. This is why it's important for us to become familiar and okay with just basic space, openness, the potentiality of situations without knowing what's there. So in order to become comfortable with all of these things, it's important to have a strong practice of meditation. by being okay with openness, relaxation, a bit of a potentiality, the unknown, becoming more familiar with your mind. By practicing whatever technique that you're doing, you're becoming more familiar with yourself and more friendly with yourself. And in that way, your compassion can be based on reality, what you see in front of you, and what is actually going on inside of yourself. So I just want to put a couple of caveats out there. There are a couple of situations where this sort of line of thought is not necessarily as helpful in the modern time. One is if your chemical imbalance in your brain, is causing you suffering, you'll want to potentially get professional help for that. And compassion practice may or may not hurt, but I would suggest, addressing the root cause of the problem. So don't do this instead of that. And the other thing is, in the case that you're suffering from the loss of someone, this is probably not going to alleviate that suffering. It may be a really poignant time to get back into Dharma practice when you see how life is so impermanent and how ourselves and our loved ones are not around forever. That is a really good way to strengthen, your Dharma practice and give some authentic motivation to the real life situation that we're all temporary. And that can be the foundation for some compassion. But when you're absolutely, gobsmacked by, loss, then having a good friend to talk to and give you a hug might be the kind of medicine you need. And come back to this when you're in a place where you can extend your compassion to others. And it might give you yet another way of understanding how other people are suffering. How you felt when you were mourning, what that felt like. And if you see people, everyone has lost somebody, and consider how they may be mourning right now for the things that they've lost. So, hey, thank you so much for making it to the end of the video, and we'll talk soon.